Stay with me. A millionaire CEO whispered to his loyal secretary, but his dark secret changed her forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Ethan Cole has built a life measured in quarterly reports and silent elevators. A life where the city looks small from 40 floors up and emotions are scheduled like meetings, 15 minutes at most, if they are allowed at all. Tonight, the office is empty except for the hum of the HVAC and the soft glow of a desk lamp cutting a circle of light through the dark. The rain taps the windows in a steady rhythm, and the clock on the wall slides past 11 p.m. without ceremony. Ethan stands by the glass, jacket still on, tie loosened but not removed, as if even fatigue must follow rules. Behind him, a chair scrapes gently across the floor. Claire Whitman sets down a folder, the last one, the kind labeled urgent but now finished, and waits for instructions that do not come. She has been his executive secretary for 6 years, longer than any assistant before her, long enough to know the cadence of his days and the weight of his silences. She knows when to speak and when to disappear, when coffee should be strong and when it should be forgotten. She knows the names of his investors and the brand of pen he prefers, and she knows how to leave quietly when the night turns personal. Tonight, she does not leave. Ethan turns, his face pale under the office light, eyes sharp but unfocused, and for the first time she notices his breathing is off, shallow, uneven, like someone counting steps on a staircase that never ends. He reaches for the desk, steadies himself, then lets his hand fall. The room feels smaller, the air heavier. Claire moves without thinking, a step closer, her voice calm because calm is her second language. He looks at her as if seeing her for the first time, not as a role or a title, but as a person who is here. The words slip out of him, low, almost embarrassed, the words that do not belong to a man like Ethan Cole. Stay with me, just for a moment. She nods, not because he asked, but because she already decided. She switches off the overhead lights, leaves the lamp, pours water from the carafe, places it within reach, adjusts the chair so he can sit. These are small acts, the kind that never make headlines, the kind that become habits. Claire has a habit of staying. Temporary, a stepping stone, a line on a resume that would open doors later. Instead, she became the constant in a company that changed faces every year. She learned his patterns, the late nights before board meetings, the silence after difficult calls, the way he read contracts twice even when others skimmed. She learned how to protect his time, how to intercept problems before they reached him, how to stand between chaos and the man who carried it all. Loyalty was not a dramatic choice for Claire. It was a daily one, made quietly, without witnesses. Tonight, as the rain keeps tapping the glass and the city hums below, that loyalty feels heavier than usual. She watches Ethan sit with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped as if holding something together inside himself, and she realizes how little space there has been for him to be anything but in control. Claire knows what it is like to be needed for function, not for feeling. She knows how it feels when people assume you will handle it, because you always do. Her phone vibrates once in her pocket, a reminder of a life that could exist beyond these walls, but she does not check it. She sets her bag down, straightens the desk as if order might help, and stays within arm's reach without making it obvious. This is what she does best. In her mind, staying is still a professional decision, a responsibility, a line she has not crossed. She tells herself she is here because the work is not finished, because leaders need support, because emergencies happen. She does not tell herself that she is afraid of what leaving would mean tonight, afraid of the quiet that would follow if she walked away. Ethan clears his throat, says nothing, and she feels the unspoken weight of his request linger in the room. She thinks of the times she left offices after midnight, the times she chose reliability over romance, stability over risk, and she wonders when she decided that being indispensable was safer than being chosen. The lamp on the desk casts a warm circle that does not quite reach the corners, and Claire stands in that light, steady, capable, convincing herself that this is just another long night at work, unaware that staying will ask more of her than she has ever given, and that the cost will not be paid in hours or effort, but in truth. Claire settles into motion because motion is safer than thought, and the night begins to take shape around small, practical decisions that feel almost ceremonial. She opens the cabinet beneath the credenza and finds the emergency kit she stocked months ago without being asked: bottled water, electrolyte packets, a clean glass, pain relief she never expects to use but always keeps within reach. She pours 8 ounces of water, counts silently, places it on the coaster so it does not leave a ring, and slides it toward Ethan without drawing attention. He notices anyway. He always notices the details she handles so others do not have to. She adjusts the thermostat down 2 degrees because the room feels close, then drapes his jacket over the back of the chair so it is there when he stands. These are not gestures meant to be remembered. They are habits, and habits are how she keeps fear from showing. Ethan takes a sip, winces, then steadies himself, his breathing easing by a fraction. He does not thank her. He does not need to. The quiet stretches, comfortable in a way that surprises them both. Claire checks her watch, not because she plans to leave, but because routine anchors her, and she notes the time like a bookmark she can return to later. She pulls a legal pad from her bag, not to take notes, but to draw a line across the page and write the date at the top, a small act that tells her this moment belongs somewhere real. Ethan rubs his temples, eyes closed, and she remembers the last time she saw him like this, months ago after a merger announcement, when the press had called him relentless, and he had smiled through it all. Tonight there is no audience. She moves the desk lamp a few inches so the light does not glare, lowers it to a softer glow, and the room exhales with them. He asks for nothing, and that scares her more than if he had asked for everything. Claire sets a reminder on her phone for his medication schedule, something she learned quietly from a physician's assistant months earlier when she noticed the pattern of his absences. She had never mentioned it. She had simply adjusted his calendar, spaced the meetings, built buffers no one questioned. Because results stayed the same. Ethan opens his eyes and looks at her with a tired clarity that feels new. For a second, she thinks he might say something that will change the shape of the night, but he only nods, accepting the glass, accepting her presence. The rain outside thickens, streaking the windows like lines drawn by a steady hand, and the city blurs into a wash of light. Claire sits in the chair opposite him, not across the desk, but angled, close enough to be useful without being intrusive. She folds her hands, rests them on her knee, and lets the silence do its work. Inside her, something loosens, a knot she did not know she was carrying, and she realizes that caring like this feels different from being efficient. It feels slower. It feels heavier. She tells herself it is still professional, still within the boundaries she understands, but the room has changed, and so has the meaning of staying. Ethan sets the glass down carefully, as if it matters that it does not make a sound, and she notices the way his shoulders drop when he breathes out. Routine has taken hold. The lamp, the water, the temperature, the time marked on a page, and in that simple sequence, something fragile finds room to exist. Claire watches him steady, and without knowing why, she keeps the legal pad open, leaving space beneath the date, as if she expects this night to ask for more, as if the habits she relies on are quietly becoming promises she will have to keep. The night deepens, and with it comes a subtle shift Claire feels before she can name it, a change in the air that routine alone cannot smooth over. Ethan straightens as if to stand, then pauses, his hand hovering midair, fingers flexing as though they have forgotten their order. His jaw tightens, a thin line of tension appearing where calm had settled moments before. Claire notices the way his gaze loses its anchor, how the steady rhythm she counted earlier stutters. She does not panic. She moves. She slides the chair closer, asks him to sit, keeps her voice level, practical, the way she has learned to make urgency sound ordinary. He shakes his head once, then exhales too quickly, too shallow, and she recognizes the pattern she hoped she was wrong about. She reaches for the glass, encourages another sip, counts his breaths with him without saying the numbers aloud. Ethan closes his eyes, presses his thumb to the edge of the desk as if grounding himself, and for a moment the man who commands rooms looks like someone trying not to disappear inside his own body. Claire checks the time again, then checks his pupils in the soft light, something she learned late one night after a long conversation with a clinician who spoke in careful terms and never asked why she wanted to know. Ethan opens his eyes and meets hers, a flicker of apology passing across his face, and she realizes this is not new. This has been happening longer than she understood. She reaches for her phone and silences it, a choice she does not analyze, and then she notices the pill case peeking from his briefcase, tucked behind files, hidden but not well enough. She does not touch it. She does not ask yet. She files the detail away like everything else that matters. The episode passes, slowly, like a tide pulling back, leaving the room changed in ways that are hard to measure. Ethan steadies, shoulders rising and falling with more control, and the color returns to his face in careful increments. He clears his throat and says he is fine, a phrase Claire has heard too many times to believe. She nods anyway, because belief is not what he needs right now. She suggests a break, proposes rescheduling tomorrow's early call, already drafting the message in her head, and he does not argue. That alone tells her more than words could. She moves the lamp again, lowers it further, creates a softer edge to the night, and sits back within reach. Ethan rubs his wrist, a small, unconscious motion, and she remembers seeing that same gesture during flights, during long meetings, during moments of strain that never made the news. The realization settles with weight and clarity. This is not a one-time weakness. This is a condition, managed, hidden, worked around with discipline and silence. Claire feels the ground shift under her careful assumptions, and with it comes a new responsibility she did not agree to but cannot ignore. Ethan looks at her, really looks, and she wonders how long he has been afraid of this moment, of being seen without the armor that success provides. He starts to say something, stops, and she gives him space, because space is another form of care. The rain eases outside, leaving the city washed and bright, and the clock moves past midnight. Claire remains where she is, aware now that staying means more than support, that it means proximity to something fragile and real. She does not yet know the full truth, but she knows enough to understand that the line between her role and her heart has begun to blur, and that whatever Ethan has been carrying alone is closer to the surface than either of them expected. The truth arrives quietly, the way it always does when it can no longer be postponed, carried not by drama, but by necessity. Ethan reaches for his briefcase with a deliberate calm that feels practiced, opens the inner pocket, and removes a thin folder that does not bear a company logo. He places it on the desk between them, aligns it with the edge, and keeps his hand on top as if it might move on its own. Claire does not touch it. She waits, because waiting has become a language they share. Ethan inhales, slower this time, and speaks in a voice stripped of authority, careful and plain. He tells her about the clinical program the company funded years ago, a fast-track treatment designed to stabilize a condition like his, approved under emergency protocols that were legal on paper but compromised in spirit. He tells her how consent forms were rushed, how disclosures were softened, how a line was crossed because results mattered and timelines were tight, and pressure came from every direction at once. He does not say the word wrongdoing. He does not need to. Claire listens, her posture steady, her hands folded, her face open but guarded. He tells her that the treatment worked for him, that it bought time and function and silence, but that it also tied him to decisions he regrets, decisions that helped the company surge forward while others paid a quieter price in uncertainty and risk. He tells her that the oversight committee flagged concerns, that a report was buried in an appendix, that he signed off because he believed the alternative would be worse. Claire feels the room tilt, not with shock, but with recognition. She understands systems. She understands how good intentions can be bent by momentum until they resemble something else entirely. She also understands choice. When Ethan finishes, he removes his hand from the folder, leaving it closed, and looks at her without defense. He says he has lived with this secret because exposing it would unravel more than a reputation. It would undo careers, stall treatments, shake trust. He says he has told no one because leadership demands certainty, and this truth offers none. Claire breathes out slowly, the sound barely there, and considers what this means for her, for the work she does, for the person she has believed him to be. She thinks of the buffers she built, the meetings she moved, the nights she stayed, all in service of a machine that now feels compromised. She asks one question, not accusatory, not soft. Are the patients informed now? Ethan answers honestly. Some are. Some are not. He says the board would fight disclosure, that legal teams are prepared, that silence is safer in the short term. Claire closes her eyes for a moment, then opens them, and when she speaks her voice is clear. She tells him that staying cannot mean carrying this alone, that care without truth becomes complicity, that loyalty without integrity costs more than leaving ever could. The words land with weight, not as an ultimatum but as a boundary. Ethan nods, a small, accepting motion, and for the first time she sees relief cross his face, not because she forgives him, but because she sees him. The folder remains unopened between them, a line neither has crossed yet, and in that pause Claire understands that this night has changed her forever, not because she learned a secret, but because she learned what staying would require. The room holds the truth like a held breath, and when it releases, the sound is not loud but decisive. Claire pushes her chair back an inch, a small distance that feels enormous, and stands. The movement breaks the spell of stillness they have shared all night. She gathers her bag, aligns the strap over her shoulder, and smooths the legal pad closed without looking at it, as if sealing something that cannot be reopened. Her voice is steady when she says she cannot be the person who keeps this, that knowing changes the math of staying. She explains that her work has always been about clarity, about making sure the right things happen at the right time, and that this secret turns her role into something she did not consent to be. Ethan listens without interruption, hands folded, eyes fixed on the space where her chair was, and for once he does not reach for control. He says he understands, that he never meant to put this on her, that he would accept whatever distance she needs. He says he will handle it, whatever that means, and the word whatever lands poorly between them. Claire pauses at the door, not dramatic, not waiting to be stopped, simply finishing what she started. She tells him that care without boundaries corrodes both people, that loyalty becomes dangerous when it asks for silence at the wrong time. The city hums beyond the glass, normal and indifferent, and the clock slides toward 1:30 in the morning. Ethan stands then, slower than before, and the effort costs him. He steadies himself against the desk, breath measured, pride stripped away. When he speaks, it is not as a chief executive, but as a man who knows he is losing something he did not know how to protect. He asks her to stay, not for the company, not for convenience, but because he is afraid of what happens if she leaves now. He does not promise outcomes. He promises honesty. He says he will not ask her to carry this, that he will open the folder to the people who need to see it, that he will accept the consequences that follow. Claire turns, studies him, and sees the cost already written on his face. She considers the years she spent being indispensable, the nights she chose order over feeling, the safety she built by never stepping past her job description. Is not made in fear alone. She makes it clear that staying tonight does not mean staying forever. Ethan accepts the terms without negotiation, gratitude, and resolve mixing in his eyes. The lamp casts a softer light as she returns to her place, and the distance between them feels both safer and more fragile than before. The secret still sits on the desk, closed and heavy, but the choice has shifted, and with it the shape of the night, leaving both of them changed, uncertain, and finally honest about what staying will demand next. Morning approaches without ceremony, the sky lightening a shade at a time, as if testing their resolve. Ethan stands at the desk before the windows, jacket folded now, sleeves rolled with intention rather than exhaustion. Claire sits nearby, not working, not hovering, present in a way that feels new to them both. The folder is open at last, its contents arranged neatly, not for concealment, but for clarity. Ethan drafts messages in plain language, no softened verbs, no protective distance, and Claire watches him choose each word as if it matters, because now it does. He schedules a special board session for later that morning, marks it mandatory, includes counsel and compliance, and sends the notice before doubt can interfere. When he finishes, he closes the laptop and rests his palms on the desk, steady, committed. Claire notices the absence of theatrics, the way responsibility can be quiet when it is real. She asks practical questions about timing and disclosure pathways, about patient communication protocols and independent review, and he answers without defensiveness, acknowledging where he does not know and where he will listen. This is the work he avoided for years, and the relief in facing it surprises him. The city wakes fully, traffic building below, a world ready to judge outcomes without understanding the nights that shape them. Ethan makes a call to his physician, not to adjust schedules or negotiate margins, but to coordinate care openly, to accept limits rather than hide from them. He makes another call to his chief operating officer, brief and direct, asking for support rather than silence. Each step costs him something intangible yet heavy, and each step makes the room feel more breathable. Claire stands and pours fresh water, replaces the empty glass, checks the time not out of habit but alignment, and realizes she is witnessing a turning point rather than managing a crisis. When the first responses arrive, cautious and urgent, Ethan does not flinch. He reads them, acknowledges them, and keeps moving. He asks Claire if she will help coordinate the logistics of the board session, not as a command but as a request, and she considers the line she drew hours earlier. She agrees to help with process, not protection, makes that boundary explicit, and he accepts it without bargaining. They work side by side in focused silence, building a structure that can hold truth without collapsing. As the hour approaches, Ethan pauses, his breath catching briefly, and Claire steadies him with a nod rather than touch, a reminder that strength does not require performance. He thanks her then, not for staying, not for loyalty, but for insisting on integrity when it would have been easier to accept comfort. The board session begins on time, voices filtering through the speaker, serious and measured. Ethan opens with a statement that does not deflect, outlining facts, acknowledging failures, committing to independent oversight and full disclosure. The room beyond the screen reacts as expected, questions sharp, stakes high, consequences implied, but Ethan does not retreat. He stays present, answers plainly, and accepts next steps without condition. Claire listens from her seat, a witness rather than a shield, and feels the weight of the choice she helped catalyze. When the session ends, there is no relief, only resolve. Ethan closes the laptop and exhales, longer than he is all night, and looks at Claire with a steadiness that did not exist before dawn. Presence he asked for, and she chose to give. The clinic is calm, neutral, and unassuming, and the air smells faintly of disinfectant and coffee. Ethan listens as options are outlined, risks explained in full sentences, and he asks questions without posturing. Claire notices the steadiness in his posture, the way transparency seems to anchor him rather than weaken him. Afterward, they walk 2 blocks in the late afternoon sun, keeping an easy pace, stopping once when he feels lightheaded, resuming when it passes. Healing is not dramatic here. It is logistical, deliberate, earned. Back at the office, changes ripple outward. Independent reviewers arrive, documents move through daylight, conversations become uncomfortable and then productive. Claire coordinates disclosures with patient advocates and compliance teams, careful to center clarity over control. She declines tasks that would blur her boundaries and accepts those that align with accountability. Ethan respects every line she draws, and in that respect trust rebuilds brick by brick. He rests when he needs to, eats when reminded, and allows the day to be shaped by care rather than conquest. One evening, weeks later, they sit on the rooftop terrace as the city cools, the skyline softened by dusk. There is no crisis to manage, no folder between them. Ethan speaks about fear without dramatizing it, about learning to ask rather than command, about the humility of accepting help that does not come with conditions. Claire listens and shares her own adjustments, how she is learning to be present without being indispensable, how choosing herself has made room for something gentler. The space between them holds warmth without urgency. Healing continues in small signs, steadier mornings, fewer absences, a calendar that breathes. Claire notices the way Ethan smiles now when he finishes a difficult call, not relieved by concealment, but grounded by truth. He thanks people publicly, credits teams honestly, and accepts criticism without retreat. She watches the man he is becoming and recognizes the quiet courage it takes to live without armor. One afternoon, a patient advocate sends a note of appreciation, simple and sincere, acknowledging transparency and follow-through. Ethan reads it twice and sets it down with care. Claire sees his eyes shine, not with pride but with release. Later, they walk again, this time farther, nearly a mile along the river, stopping to watch the water catch the light. Ethan keeps pace without strain. He tells her he feels lighter, not because consequences disappeared, but because hiding no longer defines his days. Claire feels her own chest ease, aware that healing has reached her too, loosening the reflex to overfunction, inviting trust without surrender. When they part that evening, there is no assumption, only gratitude and an understanding that choosing each other, even provisionally, has made them both stronger. Healing, she realizes, is not a finish line. It is a practice, renewed daily, sustained by honesty, patience, and the courage to stay present when leaving would be easier. The season turns almost without notice, summer easing into a milder light, and with it comes a steadiness that feels earned rather than accidental. Ethan invites Claire to the office early one morning, not for urgency, but for quiet. The building is awake but calm, elevators moving without rush, the city stretching awake below. He has prepared nothing elaborate, no speech polished for applause. He simply asks her to sit with him at the long table where decisions used to feel heavy and final. He speaks plainly, telling her that the company has stabilized under new oversight, that accountability has become habit rather than reaction, that he has learned to lead without hiding behind certainty. He tells her his health is managed now with honesty, with schedules that respect rest, with people who know the truth and choose to stay anyway. Then he tells her what he wants and what he does not want. He does not want promises made out of gratitude or fear. He does not want loyalty purchased with proximity. He wants a choice made freely, with eyes open. He asks her to stay with him, not as his secretary, not as a safeguard, but as a partner who can walk beside him without surrendering herself. The words are careful, quiet, and they land without pressure. Claire listens, feeling the clarity of the moment settle in her chest. She thinks of the nights she spent measuring her worth by usefulness, of the safety she built by never asking for more. She thinks of the days that followed truth, of healing that required patience rather than control, of a man who learned to ask instead of demand. She tells him she has already stepped away from her role, that she will not return to it, that she is choosing a different shape for her work and her life. She tells him that staying now would mean choosing him as he is, not as a title or a task. Ethan nods, accepting the boundary as part of the answer, and waits. Claire reaches for his hand, a simple gesture that feels decisive. She says she will stay, not because she has to, but because she wants to build something honest with him, something that allows both of them to be whole. The city outside continues its mourning, unaware of the quiet promise made inside. Weeks later, they walk along the river again, the path familiar, their pace matched. There is laughter now, easy and unguarded, and silence that feels companionable rather than tense. Ethan carries nothing he needs to hide. Claire carries nothing she needs to manage. They plan simply, dinners cooked at home, weekends unclaimed, a future that unfolds without hurry. One evening, as the light softens and the water reflects the sky, Ethan stops and turns to her. He does not kneel. He does not perform. He tells her he wants to keep choosing truth with her, every day, even when it costs comfort. He asks if she will choose that life with him. Claire answers without hesitation. They stand there, hands linked, the city bearing witness without knowing it. And in that ordinary moment, commitment feels less like a declaration and more like a practice they are ready to share. Staying, they have learned, is not a plea whispered in fear, but a promise spoken in daylight, sustained by honesty, courage, and love that does not ask either of them to disappear.